You're listening to Channel Kindness Radio.
Hello, Channel Kindness community. It's Shadille with Team Born This Way Foundation on Channel Kindness Radio. I'm so honored to be speaking with Gabrielle, who, as a college sophomore, saw that the stigma surrounding mental health was keeping her and her peers from seeking the care that they needed. So she and her friends founded Stronger Than Stigma, a nonprofit dedicated to mental health advocacy for and by millennials. Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for your amazing work. I'm so excited to be talking with you about Stronger Than Stigma and how you and your team are responding during this time. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a huge honor. I appreciate you making time.
Oh, we appreciate you for taking the time. And I'd love to jump right in and ask you, what does Stronger Than Stigma mean to you?
Sure. So Stronger Than Stigma is my baby. So I guess for me, it means that I have the ability to have this platform where I'm able to speak to an issue that I feel is my generation's responsibility to tackle. I feel like millennials are situated in this really awesome space where I think we're finally old enough that, our parents and maybe even our grandparents will give us the benefit of the doubt that we're capable of researching on our own and, having the facts to support arguments and making the argument that we need to be talking about mental health. And then, our goal really is that younger generations hopefully would look up to us as role models, and moving forward, we would like to create a world where, I want to come into contact with somebody in Gen Z, hopefully not younger, hopefully Gen Z, that they say to me, like, oh yeah, therapy is my extracurricular activity on a Wednesday. Like, why is that? What stigma? Like, why was that ever weird? Like, I don't get it. So I guess my dream is really that Stronger Than Stigma is this movement that breaks down these barriers once and for all and invites everybody in, even though, our messaging is trying to attract our peers so that we empower each other to not only get the help that we need, but also to be examples for others in this space too, and bring the other generations along.
I love that, bringing each other along on this ride to end the stigma, and for someone like in a future generation to say, what stigma? I love that. I am in full alignment there. And I think so many times the emotions or the troubles of young people, our generation or Gen Z at the current moment, are trivialized by older generations. And the truth is that, and we see it in our research, that young people are worried or stressed about very real and valid ways. And we're stressed about financial implications of the economy. We are stressed about the current racial crisis, this pandemic, and there's just so many things piling on. And I'm curious, for you, in an interview, you once shared that for as long as you can remember, you've been a worrier. So for so many of us who are worrying at this moment or feeling stressed, what can we do to help stop those thoughts or cope with how we're feeling?
Sure. Yes. So I will wholeheartedly, agree to acknowledge that, that I am a worrier. I think I came out of the womb, an anxious personality where I don't necessarily predict, doom and gloom and sit up at night, concerned for the worst. But I do have fears and concerns that I feel like, I take with me in my daily life in a way that, before calling it out and seeking help for it, along with depression, probably was going to impact my life in a way that was not, helpful and might hold me back. So I'm all about, calling it what it is. There's a brand called Natural Life that has a collection that actually helps benefit like the OCD Foundation, at least in Jacksonville. And they have a mug that's like warrior, not worrier. And I'm like, yes, I love that. So yes, anyway, I think that there's a lot to be said for the current situation that we're in, causing worry, like rightly so. Like we're in the middle of a global pandemic that has, you know, economic repercussions. People are out of jobs. You know, they're being told that they need to stay home to protect other people. You know, that them visiting their family could put their family at risk or in danger. Like all of these things that are, you know, super scary and unprecedented. And then on top of all of this, we're seeing this pivotal moment in American history with racial tension, you know, and it's time that we had racial justice. Like it makes no sense that it took us this long, you know, to fight for what's right, or to pay attention to it. So it just, there's a lot going on right now. And I think that the biggest step to, I guess, quote unquote, overcoming the anxiety or the worry or whatnot is just first to call it out, that like it's there, it belongs there. Like if we were not affected by some of the things going on in the news, then I would be worried for us, because I would be like, well, do we not have feelings? Like, do we not bleed? Or whatever that phrase is, you know? And it's like, we're all in this together. The fact that we are a community as a society at large, and that we're having reactions to all of these things about, you know, the safety and well-being of ourselves and others is huge. And so I think that you can't blame yourself for feeling the way that you do, but acknowledging it first, and then also not being afraid to voice the concerns that you have, to like to reach out to your friends and family members and say like, hey, I'm not doing so hot right now. Like I'm scared, I'm worried, I'm anxious, whatever it is that you're feeling. It's not on you to keep it bottled up. It's not going to help anybody. And I think that's one of our central messages at Stronger Than Stigma, is like, there is strength in asking for help, you know, please do it. And that would be my guiding advice.
Thank you. I love everything. And it really spoke to me when you said, be a warrior, not a worrier.
Yeah, right. Like you.
And how does Stronger Than Stigma help bring attention to these much needed conversations?
Sure. I think, you know, you have to meet people where they're at. And so the whole like founding story of Stronger Than Stigma, we decided, you know, in 2013 when we were starting this, that it was like scary territory to navigate, because in 2013, mental health and talking about it was not trendy, you know, like nobody was doing it. And so our original premise was, let's meet people where they're at, which is online. You know, if we can start an account on social media where we just post engaging memes, or, you know, little chuckles, or, you know, articles with facts that support, you know, what we knew to be truth, and spark dialogue that way, that would be great, because then people could engage, but from the privacy of, you know, behind their keyboard and their screen. And so they were kind of anonymous, or, you know, it was their online personality, not their like in real life, you know, persona being, you know, quote unquote, lumped in this category. And it, you know, it worked great in the sense of we got the attention that we dreamed of, and people were following and tuning in from around the world. And we were starting to get messages from around the world from people that were like, this is so great, but like, where do you meet? How can I get more involved? And we're like, oh crap, we better organize. Like we better like take this movement that's happening online that's working out so well and like put it into action in real life. And at that point, you know, we started looking around like, okay, do we, you know, form a campus club at UF? You know, yeah, that would be great, but also it's bigger than that. Like, let's form a nonprofit is what we came up with. So our first chapter was in fact that student chapter, because we were students, and it was always very important to us that I caution myself when using the word peer, because I like to redefine it. I don't like the idea. I feel like in the mental health space, peer to peer just means like, you know, from one person with depression to another person with depression. And I feel like that's not a very like nuanced reading of the word. I think a peer is, you know, somebody who's walked a mile in your shoes and also is in the same stage of life as you. So I think that that's how we burst onto the scene and distinguished ourselves, is like, you know, we are a for us, by us social movement dedicated to mental health advocacy for millennials, you know, by millennials. And our, you know, leadership team reflects that. It's a very, you know, diverse group of millennials making calls and decisions on programming and, our public, image and things like that, all shaped based on very different upbringings and worldviews. And I love that about us. But yes, so when I say peer, I mean, people who have struggled similarly or love people who have struggled similarly and are also living with the same struggles. Like, we struggled to figure out what our college majors were going to be. And then when we graduated and we were like, oh no, we're entering the real world. Like, what now? That's a pivotal time in a young person's life. And I feel like it's not given a lot of respect, and there's no manual. Like, I feel like parents are there to guide us, and we're really lucky if we have hands-on parents, but I feel like even their memories can get a little shaky of like what it was like to make that first leap into adulthood and the world of adulting. And I think it's scary. So yeah, I don't remember the full question now. I just started talking. I'm sorry.
No worries at all. I think we get so passionate about this topic that so many other feelings surface, and I'm here for it. And I love that you mentioned how your programming is influenced by the diverse community of young people that represent your organization. Can you talk a little bit about your programming?
Yes. So I like to say that we are community builders. So our whole mission and purpose is to encourage people to reach out for help and change the culture around doing so. But then furthermore, to create community amongst people who struggle and those who love people who struggle, because I feel like that's a commonly overlooked group of people too, like the people that are in love with, like, romantic partners, and then parents and friends of all of these people who have kind hearts and want to be supportive, and yet they don't know the first thing about mental health, and they're scared that they might say the wrong things. So they just don't broach the subject. And it's like, no, we want you to be part of our movement. And so everything is about building this community where people feel safe to come and ask questions and to meet other people that are like them, on a whole bunch of different levels, whether it's just the stage of life or, the color of their skin or the religion they practice or whatever it is, where they're like, I've never met somebody who, comes from the same background as me and has needed to overcome the prejudices, of my family or my culture that didn't let me reach out for help or whatever. Those people, I want to have a home, and I want that home to be with us. And so our programming, when we're allowed to gather in person, is based on how do we bring people together in one room for a shared experience, and that they walk away feeling, forever changed. Maybe it's not even necessarily based on what we put on the stage, but just being in a room where they get to turn to their left and right and be like, man, these people around me are here for a reason, and they support me, and they believe in what I believe in, and like, we're all here learning together. And I think that's really beautiful and powerful. So that's what our real life organization looks like. And then when we've had to pivot now to, keep up with the times, and also recognizing that this is a pivotal moment in history because people need mental health care now more than ever, and are also isolated now more than ever. I think that it's really important to build community as best we can online. And so that was, we basically dove into action. We created this 31-day virtual event marathon to celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month from the comfort of our own homes. Being isolated, we couldn't put on our awesome pop-up shop. We created this pop-up shop called The Living Room, and it was really cool. It was in Jacksonville. We rented a really cool storefront downtown in the heart of Jacksonville. And, it was part interactive art installation and part performance venue, and then all set in a living room kind of setting with couches and tables and chairs and lamps and, homey environment. And, everything about that space was just meant to spark dialogue amongst strangers. And we were like, we want it to be real talk on everything and nothing, including your mental health, because we want these conversations to be so commonplace that they just happen naturally in the course of daily life. And also acknowledging the power too of a one-on-one conversation. Advocacy groups, I think, are known to kind of stand on street corners and shout at people till they're blue in the face about how, the topic of their choice, whether it's stigma or access to care or whatever, how that's so important and it needs your attention. And like, yes, I agree. And we do that. However, I think that there is so much power in a one-on-one conversation with someone that you know and love in your life, because that's your tribe, that's your community right there. And so if you have the opportunity to change a mind in your, circle, then it's going to affect your life directly and hopefully in a positive way. You sharing and being vulnerable, and then that triggering the other person to also feel vulnerable, or comfortable enough being vulnerable. And then you have mutual respect in a way that you didn't going into that conversation. That has the capacity to change lives. So basically, in May, with coronavirus and everything, we just said this needs to continue to happen. We can't gather people in the living room, but we can gather them in their own living rooms respectively, and everybody can tune in to this programming. And I'm really, really proud of what my team did and what we accomplished, from creative journaling workshops with a mental health therapist to, we did like a lip sync night with 90s hits, and we did, we brought our Nobody's Happy comedy tour to life, where the comedian that I had traveled with back in 2018 to do this comedy tour, he and I, he hosted and recruited comics to come on every Friday night and, do their best Zoom comedy routine and just create community and shared experience and laughter in a time where I think that we really need that. So yes, it's been great.
Thank you so much. I think there is so much power in allowing ourselves to access joy during times where we may not be feeling so joyful, rightfully so. And so I'm so grateful for your team and everyone who joined you and Stronger Than Stigma for creating a space where joy can be accessed and mental health can be talked about. It is initiatives like the ones you've just mentioned that bring so much light to this topic and eliminate the stigma that surrounds mental health. So I'm so grateful for you and your team for curating such an amazing round of events that we're excited to share in this Channel Kindness story as well. And I'd love to hear about some of the resources in addition to strongerthanstigma.org that you or your team or any of the folks who joined those conversations or those live events last month recommend.
So yeah, obviously we are big proponents of telehealth right now. We really think that, even if you can't meet with your therapist or your psychiatrist, like totally still take care of yourself and do what you need to do. And it's great that there's been an expansion in a lot of these treatment options to be remote right now. So keep that up. Definitely want people doing that. Rely on us, please, for that community. We want to be that for as many people as possible, and then we also know that we're not a resource list or a hotline. And so there are other amazing organizations nationally that work to provide those services. And we would encourage people to, seek those out too. I don't think that there's nothing disloyal to us about you taking care of yourself, so we want you to do that. I hope I'm answering that question right too. The other thing is with our event marathon, everything was made free and super accessible because we wanted, everybody to have access regardless of what their financial situation was like or their background or yada yada. And we also benefited from the generosity of our guest performers or guest speakers or panelists, whatever. They were all so generous with their time and also with their contact information. So if you want to go back and watch any of the videos, then I would invite people to do that and even share them and strike up conversations and whatnot. And also, listen for them to say like, hey, email me here. And then you would have access to the professionals in our network as well. So I would encourage people to reach out to, the Stronger Than Stigma team, to me, to the people on our videos.
Your message is clear. Millennials have the power and desire to end the stigma around mental health. And I'm so amazed by your work. Thank you again for connecting with us. And if there's anything else you'd like to share in closing, please let me know.
Sure. We've inherited a truly awful system that puts people of different races in different places in society. And it just pains me on so many different levels that, you know, we're in 2020 and here we are fighting a fight, you know, that started hundreds of years ago. And the only thing that I'm seeing now that gives me hope is the fact that our generation wants to be the solution. You know, we want to mobilize, we want to remain peaceful and get our message across. I just want to take a moment kind of to recognize that I know that I might be in over my head even on that. And so we're trying to create a system with Stronger Than Stigma where we'll be there to catch you afterwards, that, you know, we'll have programming to acknowledge the trauma. You know, if you're participating in a public demonstration and all of a sudden you're tear gas, like that's a traumatic experience. You're going to carry that image with you for a long time. And so we want to be serving the mental health needs of the community that's activating right now, because we're with them. You know, that's our community. And so we're going to do what we do best, which is serve mental health and the communities that deal with mental health, which is everybody. And yeah, so that's just something that I'm excited to be working on.
Gabrielle, I'm so honored to know you and to collaborate in sharing your story and your work.
You rock, Shadille. I really appreciate you.
You're listening to Channel Kindness Radio.